dearly beloved, you were built to last. Even though it may not feel that way in the midst of the most intense bouts of challenges, I promise you, you are. Today we're going to be sharing about how hard seasons come as a gift to help to condition us and increase our endurance in preparation for what's to come. Hi, I'm Kari Heron, speaker, media content queen, and consultant to businesses and leaders, inviting you into this episode of Thrive with Kari. Watch this video all the way through to the end, but right now I need you to hit like and subscribe to help my channel grow and to find people just like you who have a growth mindset who want more out of life. So housekeeping matters aside, let's get right into the topic of the hour. A few days ago, Dr. Alexis published a video in which he mentioned that endurance was an important word for this hour. And I thought, as she spoke the word endurance, something leaped within me. It felt like it was the right word to describe exactly what it is that I have been going through over the past few years. So it got me thinking very deeply. So let's get deeper into what endurance really is. It is a staying power of enduring, tolerating, bearing, forbearing an unpleasant or difficult process or situation without giving way. The capacity of something to last or to withstand wear and tear. It denotes or relates to a race or sporting event that takes place over a long distance or otherwise demands great physical stamina. Its origin is from the old French word endurer, which means continued existence or ability to last. So endurance is the fact or power of enduring or bearing pain, hardships, etc. The ability or strength to continue or last, especially despite fatigue, stress, or other adverse conditions. In other words, again, this word comes up again, stamina. Endurance is bearing hardships or staying power. It connotes ability and capacity and courage and fortitude and grit and mettle and patience and perseverance and persistence and tenacity and tolerance, vitality and strength. It is the ability to continue with an unpleasant or difficult situation or experience or activity over a long period of time. Even in the world of exercise, endurance is a powerful concept. Exercise is generally separated into aerobic or endurance and power strength activities. Exercise, that which is in the endurance category, is classically performed against a relatively low load over a longer duration, whereas strength exercise is performed against a relatively high load, like heavyweights, over a short duration. So it's not doing short bursts of activity. It's being able to last for longer periods. Ironically, the way to increase endurance is with low intensity exercises like brisk walking or jogging, dancing, swimming, biking, climbing stairs or hills, or playing sports. But the best way to actually increase in your capacity for any of these activities is through interval training. That is very short periods of very intense activity, immediately followed by longer stretches of lower level activity, then repeat for about 10 to 30 minutes intervals, depending on your conditioning. It's like how we start out going for jogs as beginners. We walk to warm up, and then when we feel a little bit warm, then we try jogging for a few minutes or maybe seconds is more like it, until we're very winded. And then we start walking thinking, oh my goodness, what have I gotten myself into? And then after a while, you say, well, I can try again. And you try and you do a little bit of burst of a jog. And then You get winded again, and then you start to walk like, oh goodness, this is going to be hard. And then you keep on doing that. And then what happens is that over time, you probably jog a little bit longer and walk a little bit less. And so you can jog for longer periods. And even beyond that, if you continually keep on at it, you'll be able to even exercise for longer periods. So maybe the first time you decide to go for a jog, you probably last 5 minutes, and then in a year or two, you may be able to jog for like half an hour straight. So that's what endurance conditioning does for us over time. So that's what challenges and hardships and hard places and hard lessons and afflictions also do for us, believe it or not. They feel like living hell, and your heart feels like it's going to burst right out of your chest, just like when you're trying to run when you're not really conditioned. But if you allow yourself to go through those times, those hard exercises and activities, those hard periods, and not avoid them, you expand into a stronger version of yourself that's built to last. I have just ended my own cycle, a painful cycle of 7 years. And now I see it as a 7 year high intensity interval workout, because that's what it was in both life and in business. You see, I left a country I didn't want to leave, the United Arab Emirates. You probably know Dubai, which is a city, not even the capital, Abu Dhabi is. And I had to leave the United Arab Emirates, and I went to Jamaica to support yet another career move of my ex-husband, then husband. The family was in Jamaica for all of 6 months, well, actually 3, before he was set off again, coming into another country that I was not excited to go to, Aruba. But as supportive as a wife as I was, and an obedient believer that I was, of course I came. And here I immediately faced the worst hell. So much so that I was bent on running back home to Jamaica with my 3-year-old son at the time, because in those few moments that we had been in Jamaica prior to coming here, I finally found the joys of community and family that I missed in expat life. And I didn't see why I needed to subject myself to this level of unnecessary hell in Aruba, especially by myself. But before I made any move, I prayed. And while eyeing my suitcases to pack them, the answer came. And it was not what I had expected. It was, trust in the Lord and do good, dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture. In one translation, it says, dwell in the land and cultivate faithfulness. So, of course, that wasn't what I wanted to hear. But as one who decided to live a life completely yielded to God in swift obedience, I humbly put my tail between my legs, as we say back home in Jamaica, and I presented my life as a living sacrifice. As you can tell, I was not happy about it. No joke, no lie. But this whole thing was about trusting God, right? So that means that everything would get better, right? No, not quite. Yes, it was about trusting God, but certainly things did not get better. They got way worse before they got better. But as hard as it has gotten, there's a deeper level of assurance that comes when we know that we are walking in God's will for our lives. My home life became tumultuous, ending in separation. And when my husband decided to leave, I sought God again for direction. Do I go back home to Jamaica? No. Don't go down to Egypt, was what he replied. Stay where I tell you. Stay here in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. I'm giving you and your children all these lands, fulfilling the oath that I swore to your father Abraham. Say what? In a foreign country? Alone with a young child? Single motherhood? Yup, I was terrified. Name the fear. I had it up to here. I was broken. And I was broken into a million pieces. I had spent an entire decade of my life devoted to my marriage. And here I was on my own without even a legal way to stay in the country with my child. Because, again, I was moving because I was married. So God led me into entrepreneurship again. So I raised the capital to start my company, and I was able to regain residency for my child and myself from my role as an investor. And then the challenges went into high gear. When I look back, I can't tell you. I can't tell you how I made it through. I really can't. I can only tell you who. I can't tell you how. The building of endurance is an important part of cultivating the conditions for success in both life and business, and even in ministry. Inherent in the concept of endurance is a muscle building virtue of patience. You cannot endure without patience. I used to say in my 20s that impatience was my weakness. I used to actually think that my hastiness and was something of a badge of honor. I was the one who would get things done quickly and efficiently and effectively. And I used to kind of like boast about that. But not all things in life are completely within our own control. And indeed, many great things require patience, chance of patience. As wonderful as avocados are, it takes an avocado tree a whopping 10 years to bear its first fruit. African elephants, when they get pregnant, actually are in gestation for 22 months. But topping it all off, the longest wait goes to the deep sea octopus, the Granolidon boreopacifica, that has a gestation period of a mind-boggling 4.5 years. I thought I had to carry long for 41 weeks and 3 days with my child. Patience and endurance, like perseverance, require waiting, and sometimes for long, nerve-wracking periods. Ultimately, endurance requires an ability to see and believe in something bigger than what is obvious. It's like a mother knowing that what she's carrying in her womb is a promise of a new life and worth everything it takes to bring to term. There's a baby at the end of gestation. You just know it. There's a baby coming. Similarly, faith is built in the process of cultivating endurance. Or is it the other way around? You tell me in the comments which one. Is it that endurance builds faith or faith builds endurance? Let me know. In Hebrews 11, faith is described as a substance of things hoped for, the evidence of which not seen. I just love the poetry of the King James Version of this verse. But simply put, faith is the confidence in what we hope for and the assurance in things not seen. It takes supernatural vision to have faith. Essentially, we are believing in what doesn't currently exist because we trust in something or someone bigger than our current circumstances. In order to endure, we have to not only trust God, but we also have to trust the process, His process. Endurance requires consistency. Endurance is never built in a one off occasion. Remember, it is bearing low load over time. The process, my dear, is the hard part. In the first season of Thrive with Kari, I interviewed a lot of entrepreneurs at different stages in their entrepreneurial journey. It was where I felt I was being led in the direction of the podcast, and I followed the leading of the Holy Spirit. I always had a very strong entrepreneurial focus for the show, but I didn't know why I was so heavily invested in talking to fellow entrepreneurs until the pandemic hit and people in Aruba, from which we broadcast live on radio, registered companies in record breaking numbers. It was then that I realized that I had been meticulously sowing seeds of entrepreneurship over the airways for 18 hours of programming ahead of the pandemic. Those conversations were so inspiring, clearly, not only to me. I saw seasoned entrepreneurs choke up when they realized just how much they had to overcome and how much they had endured in the process of living out their entrepreneurship journey. Many of them didn't even have the privilege of sitting and contemplating the depth of the process before our conversation because they were too busy walking it out. And some have had to shift and transition their business operations completely as the pandemic changed the marketplace conditions worldwide. But what I can tell you is that entrepreneurs are a bunch of resilient believers who have not only dared to dream and oftentimes really big, but to also to throw their whole lives to that cause, aka business, for which they believe. As an entrepreneur myself, I can tell you that the entrepreneurship race is not for the swift, but for those who will endure to the very end. I've had the distinct privilege of mentoring clients to help them find their blind spots that compromise their efforts and make adjustments necessary to achieve exponential success. Entrepreneurs are always committed to processing themselves into becoming better. We often see sensationalized stories on podcasts about this person or another who has become an overnight success. But let me tell you, the best kept secret in entrepreneurship, overnight successes often take years. And sometimes they're preceded by very great many failures, even successive failures. It is the clarity of vision, commitment to the process, refusal to be in collusion with rejection, adaptability, and a growth mindset that actually create conditions for entrepreneurs to tap into success. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that money is hard to make and it takes a lot to make money. I don't have limiting beliefs about wealth generation, and I believe that money loves speed and loves to be made very quickly. But I also know that sometimes there are some things that we need to be processed out of us and into us as entrepreneurs in order for us to fully maximize our potential. We have to continually think, learn, grow, and reinvest. And shout out to the McDonald's who have this amazing show, Think, Grow, and Invest. Wealth is a knowledge concept and not just a money concept. And entrepreneurship is way more than just about money. And it literally puts the entrepreneur through the fire to be refined. Any business can do well in the short term, but it takes much adaptability to be able to last the test of time. Sometimes even companies that we thought were indefatigable become extinct. Remember Kodak? Remember Blockbuster? Yeah, they are now right next to the dinosaurs in the Smithsonian. Endurance needs adaptability to be responsive to changing conditions over time. How the body performs in the first mile of a run and the strategy used in that early part of the race will not help when a marathoner hits the famous wall when the body literally starts to freeze up and shut down. Perseverance is what's needed when that happens. When your entire body is working against you, you've got to be able to use mental acuity to override the overwhelming physical exhaustion. The thing is that in business, in faith, and in life, conditions will not always be pleasant and conducive to success. But it is specifically in those times when we call upon perseverance in order to endure. We are called to endure to the very end. If we do not, we give up early and forfeit winnings. But some things ought not to be endured forever. If you catch real hell, like if you're in a bad business, a bad partnership, wrong job, bad location, a career that feels like it's soul sucking, or a relationship that is disastrously toxic, you may seriously want to rethink enduring to that end. The good old 80s country song says, you got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, and know when to run. The key between enduring the right thing and the wrong thing is discernment. When you have cultivated a wise and discerning heart, you will know when to separate and how to separate the God thing from a good thing or even a disastrously wicked thing. And you will be able to have the freedom and confidence to cut ties swiftly in any situation that requires it. When you know that you're walking in the will of God for your life, your business, your marriage, your family, your ministry, whatever, you have the capacity to build faith to endure. It's a lot harder to endure something for which you do not have a deep seated conviction. I was recently reminded in a conversation with my South African friend, who's also a missionary, John William Ward, about two processes that so beautifully illustrate endurance: the art of refining precious metals and the traditional blacksmithing. You don't just find precious metals just lying around. Usually they're hidden within rock and dirt. And to extract metals, you have to excavate dirt and rock, then grind, crushing them into little pieces and wash them with great agitation in several different solutions. And still, that's just the very beginning. You have to go through the fire, John reminded me. Without having gone through the fire, you could never be in the position that you're in today. We don't understand the processes of God, yet He does it with every single one of us. He takes us and puts us in His fire. He takes a piece of metal, He takes either a piece of silver or gold, and He puts us in His fire. So, how does a blacksmith make weapons and armor? They're forged in the fire. He takes the raw materials, puts them together, then sticks them in the fire. And they have to stay in the fire until they become up to the appropriate red hot temperature. Then he takes the hammer and the anvil and starts beating. And then he stretches it and puts it back in the fire. And then he stretches it and puts it back in the fire. And then he molds and stretches it until it takes the shape and size of the weapon he wants. And then he keeps us into the fire until he can see his reflection in us. Not our reflection in him, but his reflection in us. And yet, it's not finished. He then takes us and uses tools to sharpen us, like how iron sharpens iron. And after he sharpens us, he puts us back in the fire so he can see if there are any kinks that need to be taken out. And then he puts us in water to harden us. We have forgotten those processes of God. God does not skimp on any part of the process. The process takes place that needs to take place in full. The process cannot be upgraded and quickened before the time, even though we really would like it to, but not with God. This is the endurance building process that happens in the desert place. You may lose people, lose things, lose status in the process, but you will save your soul. And in time, endurance will cause the desert to bloom. Remember that everything comes to pass at God's appointed time. Endurance is a process of submitting ourselves to the work that allows us to become all we were created to be. I want to share with you one of my favorite pieces of writing. It's an excerpt from the book The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. And this chapter is entitled On Work. Then a plowman said, "Speak to us of work." And he answered, saying, "You work that you may keep pace with the earth and the soul of the earth. For to be idle is to become a stranger unto the seasons and to step out of life's procession that marches in majesty and proud submission towards the infinite. When you work, you are a flute through whose heart the whispering of the hours turns to music. Which of you would be a reed, dumb and silent when all else sings together in unison? Always you have been told that work is a curse and labor a misfortune. But I say to you that when you work, you fulfill a part of earth's furthest dream assigned to you when the dream was born. And in keeping yourself with labor, you are in truth loving life. And to love life through labor is to be intimate with life's inmost secret. But if you in your pain call birth an affliction and the support of the flesh a curse written upon your brow, then I answer that naught but the sweat of your brow shall wash away that which is written. You have been told also that life is darkness, and in your weariness you echo what was said by the weary. And I say that life is indeed darkness, save when there is urge. And all urge is blind, save when there is knowledge. And all knowledge is vain, save when there is work. And all work is empty, save when there is love. And when you work with love, you bind yourself to yourself and to one another and to God. And what is it to work with love? It is to weave the cloth with threads drawn from your heart, even as if your beloved were to wear the cloth. It is to build a house with affection, even as if your beloved were to dwell in that house. It is to sow seeds with tenderness and reap the harvest with joy, even as if your beloved were to eat the fruit. It is to charge all things you fashion with a breath of your own spirit, and to know that all the blessed dead are standing about you and watching. Often I have heard you say, as if to speaking in sleep, he who works in marble and finds the shape of his own soul in the stone is nobler than he who plows the soil. And he who seizes the rainbow to lay it on a cloth in the likeness of man is more than he who makes the sandals of our feet. But I'd say, not in sleep, but in the over-wakefulness of noontide, that the wind speaks not more sweetly to the giant oaks than to the least of all the blades of grass. And he alone is great who turns the voice of the wind into a song made sweeter by his own loving. Work is love made visible. And if you cannot work with love but only with distaste, it is better that you should leave your work and sit at the gate of the temple and take alms of those who work with joy. For if you bake bread with indifference, you bake a bitter bread that feeds but half a man's hunger. For if you bake bread with indifference, you bake a bitter bread that feeds but half man's hunger. And if you grudge the crushing of the grapes, your grudge distills a poison in the wine. And if you sing, though as angels, and love not the singing, you muffle man's ears to the voices of the day and the voices of the night. I want to hear from you in the comments. Tell me some of the topics you want me to explore and some of the people you want me to interview for this podcast. Also, send us your feedback about the podcast by sending us your voice notes via DM on Instagram at Chef and Steward, and we will play them in upcoming episodes. See the description box for other ways to partner with us to support our mission to help you build healthier and wealthier relationships with yourself and others by feeding your body, mind, soul, spirit, and pocket. I'm Kari Heron, and you've been listening to Thrive with Kari, created and produced by Chef and Steward Content Studio. Join us in the next episode on YouTube and download Thrive with Kari on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and wherever podcasts may be downloaded.